Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast, everyone. My name's Elijah. This episode here today, along with the recap of the recently completed Red Sox series. I know I'm a day late, but figured we would take advantage of the off day and I would live some life. Along with the recap of that Red Sox series is the official kickoff of the Danny Coulombe 2024 All-Star campaign. Few high notes from the series before we get into all that. Cole Irvin and Corbin Burnes both had good starts. Burnes in particular. Kyle Stowers had a bit of a breakout game in game one. And Cedric Mullins is starting to show signs of life. We are cautiously optimistic here at the Warehouse Pod that Ced is starting to find his stroke. Speak to that a little bit more later. Before we do get into all that, though, as always, want to thank the sponsor of our show today, BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for NBA and NHL playoffs this season. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to the online casino, get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Don't forget to use promo code BLEAV, that's BLEAV, BLEAV, for a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, the game starts here. So that said, let's get into it. Before we get into it, we've been playing with the format of these recaps a little bit. I do think it seems valid to get away from the level of detail and granularity that I've been giving on each individual game in the series. You all probably watch the series. That's why you're fans. That's why you're interested in this podcast. And, you're intelligent people. You know how to find box scores, how to find recaps. I will, as such, take a step back from that level of detail. We'll give a little bit of an overview of each game. And then, what you guys are really probably here for is some analysis. We'll actually go and take a look at some of these players, talk about some trends. And hopefully that'll be a little bit more, intellectually stimulating for you and for us. And we'll try to keep this fresh. As always, please do give us feedback. We appreciate any kind of feedback on what you guys are liking, what you are not. We are here and we are open ears. So, quick recap of the series. The Orioles take 2 of 3. Game 1, the Orioles took in commanding fashion, 11-3. Put up 13 hits, 7 for extra bases. Cole Irvin had a nice outing in his return to the rotation. He did labor a tiny bit, allowed 7 base runners in 5 innings, 3 walks, which is pretty unusual for him. Still, after that, only a 5.4% walk rate. But he did strike out 6. He allowed no runs. That said, no runs were allowed by the Orioles at all until the freshly acquired Thyago Vieira came into the game. And there were no runs after he left the game either. So we'll chat about him a little bit later. Game 2, Tuesday. This was a brutal game, quite frankly. Grayson Rodriguez and Brian Bello seemed to be a very promising pitching matchup. Grayson allows 2 runs in the first, 1 on a solo shot to Wilyer Abreu. Abreu just dropped the bat head on a changeup. And then Bello came out in the bottom of the first inning, and it just seemed to be a game of who wants it less. The Orioles clapped back for 3 in the bottom half to the tune of 3 runs. That is, which pitcher wants it less, I guess I should say. Orioles clapped back for 3 runs. Jordan Westburg highlights that with a bases loaded single to the right side. We'll chat a little bit more about that later because, once again, it's damage on a fastball away. I tweeted it out at the time. Bello attacked with 3 straight fastballs in the outside corner. We have seen Westburg do a lot of damage on outside pitches. So really just kind of an interesting decision. As an observer, obviously they know some things that I don't. But we'll take a quick look at Westburg later and show just how much damage he's doing on outside fastballs and, really anything outside at this point. So, yeah, Grayson goes back out in the top of the second, gives up 2 more runs, and Bello just turns into a whole new human being. He strikes out 4 in a row, sits down 6 or 7 in a row, and just, the Orioles are, completely shut down for a while. In the 7th inning, the Orioles have a chance with the bases loaded and nobody out. Austin Hayes pinch hits for Cedric Mullins, immediately strikes out. Jorge Mateo grounds out to the pitcher. They get Santander at the plate, do not double up Mateo. but then Gunnar Henderson strikes out to end the inning. Just dismal, especially in a 4-3 game, to not be able to convert when you have bases loaded and nobody out. Another note on that, Austin Hayes has not looked any better since he has come back from the IL. Definitely some concern there. I don't know. He's looking a little bit like a non-tender candidate at the end of the year, unless he can really turn it around. His salary, I think, is on the order of $6 million right now, and that's too much, for a fourth outfielder, especially when we've got the likes of Stowers, Kerstead, any number of people who can come and take at bats in the outfield, and will be playing on the major league minimum. So I digress. Eventually, the game was blown open. 1 run in the 8th. Ciano Perez led up a triple to Rafael Devers, and Cano came in, allowed a single to drive him in. Cano gets out of it, earned run charge to Perez, but Keegan Aiken comes in and allows 3 runs in the 9th. Aiken looks objectively terrible right now. Orioles lose that game 8-3. So game 3 Wednesday, this one was much better. The good guys win 6-1 to take the series. A Gunnar Henderson grand slam in the 2nd inning is really all that Corbin Burnes and the Orioles would need. Gunnar takes a Cutter Crawford cutter. It's so hilarious that Cutter Crawford, his primary pitch is a cutter. It's just ridiculous. Cutter with a K, Crawford throws a cutter with a C, high and in for Gunnar's 18th of the year. Ties him with Kyle Tucker for the major league lead. Gunnar is on pace for 54 home runs at this point. Exactly, the math worked out very nicely. And that would beat out Chris Davis's 2013 season with 53 home runs for the Orioles single season record. So Corbin Burnes really was phenomenal. On a season high 108 pitches, he threw a season high 7 innings, just allowed a single unearned run in the 2nd inning. He struck out 5, allowed just 3 hits, 3 walks. His ERA is down to 2.35 on the year. Corbin Burnes is doing exactly what we traded for him to do. Got some good work from the pen. 2 scoreless from Danny Coulombe and Dylan Tate. Tate was touching 95. He kind of seemed to show a level of velocity that we hadn't really seen from him in probably 2 years or so. So just, he did give up a couple hits, but it did seem like he was kind of just physically starting to round into form. And, if we can see him flashing 97 like we did a couple years ago, hopefully he can turn into a real weapon for us. So I guess generally, notes coming out of this series, I did want to start, looking back at game 1 with Thyago Vieira. There was just all sorts of animosity thrown at this dude on Monday after he pitched. He was objectively terrible. He was awful. I will get to that, but just quick refresher. He was acquired just in time to make Jesse's recap on Sunday, if you heard that one. But as a quick refresher, if you didn't, Orioles traded right-hander Garrett Stallings for Vieira and Enuris Rodriguez, a pitcher in the Arizona Complex League. Rodriguez is only about 19 years old. Vieira is 31, if I remember correctly. So, Stallings, we got him in the Dylan Bundy trade back in the day. I think we have more than received compensation for Dylan Bundy in the way of Kyle Bradish. So, anything beyond that is gravy. That said, Garrett Stallings, he was having a hard time at AAA, he had struggled with some injuries. He had been up and down, some inconsistency. So I think that he has really a ceiling of a number 5 pitcher. And on this team, he's probably never getting that chance because of Chase McDermott, because of Cade Povich. Probably not in that order. I don't know why I said it like that, but because of those 2 guys, they're going to be the arms that come up if the Orioles ever need a start, and will be the ones in the conversation for the rotation next year. So getting back to Vieira, though, to start, he objectively sucked. He faced 5 hitters, recorded no outs. He walked 3, allowed a bases loaded triple at 110 miles an hour, and then walked 1 more for good measure before getting pulled out of the game. I'm just here to say, don't freak out. On the positive side, a super cool thing about Vieira, he is only the 5th player ever in Major League Baseball from Brazil. He is the first to play for the Orioles. growing the game of baseball internationally is always a good thing. Someone, I posted something on Twitter. Somebody came back and said, we are fans in Brazil, and, we are aware this is happening. Hope he can be, good for a long time. So growing the game of baseball is a beautiful thing. And so we thank Thyago Vieira for that. But, in the general sense of the scope of the Orioles baseball team, I just wanted to point out a couple notes on how big league clubs manage, the last one or two slots in their bullpens nowadays. And, this is good baseball clubs at that. Like the Orioles have played these games with Johan Ramirez, and Vespi's been up and down, and we've, played with options. Jonathan Heasley was here for a second. He's, back in AAA and doing a great job, I will say. I think it's 19 innings plus scoreless at this point. But so, that last spot in our bullpen has danced around a little bit. And, we DFA'd and lost Baumann when we needed some flexibility there. Traded for Vieira in that instance. So, like Mike Baumann gets picked up by the Mariners. The Dodgers picked up Jose Ramirez after the Mets had re-picked him up and then tried to DFA him again. So, the Dodgers are in on this. The Mariners, who are one of the better pitching staffs in all of baseball. Teams like the Rays cycle guys in and out. Erasmo Ramirez joined the pen, then was DFA'd. They just traded for Richard Lovelady to add him to the pen. He's got an 8.38 ERA. The Braves traded for Jimmy Herget earlier this year, and he's no longer up with the club. Daysbel Hernandez, Darius Vines, these are all guys who cycled in and out of the Braves pen this year. I'm just bringing up these good teams and bringing up these kind of no names to say that, like, this is the reality of Major League Baseball these days, right? Teams are cycling guys in and out of the back end of their bullpen. They value roster flexibility more than they value these players themselves, which it's the way things are constructed. You can only have 13 pitchers on your roster. You need to get through a long season. In a stretch like this, where the Orioles only have a couple off days in this like 2 or 3 week span, arms are valuable. And, quite frankly, the Orioles are not, I mean, they're clearly not in a position where we have somebody we trust at AAA right now. They clearly don't think Vespi has the stuff for it. And so you're kind of looking at external options. You're picking people up. Vieira had been DFA'd by the Brewers, so that made him readily available. We worked out this trade. We got a guy in, Arizona Complex League. I'm sure it'll be the Florida Complex League for us, but striking out 20 per 9 in Aneudis Rodriguez. So, this is partially a matter of convenience, and partially we also, just gave them Garrett Stallings. This isn't a, like we went all in to get this guy. It's nothing like that. If this doesn't work out, that's fine. We are going to survive without Garrett Stallings. All respect to the man, but he just wasn't a factor in our lives. I don't know why I said lives. In our plans as Orioles, as like the Orioles organization. So yeah, I guess from this point forward, right, we've got a guy who does something that only like 1 in maybe 10 relievers in all of baseball can do, and that is throw a ball 100 miles an hour. He touched 100.2 in this game. He has this very, very unique talent, throws extremely hard, and the last slot in your bullpen does not get used all that often. If your starting pitching is going well, if Corbin Burns is throwing, 7, 0 earned run, 1 run. I almost said scoreless, so I had to correct that for myself. But if Corbin Burns is throwing 7 innings, then you really have no concerns for that last spot in your bullpen. Even Grayson, when he struggled to the tune of those 4 runs, he still went 6, struck out 10. I forgot to mention that. That was a career high 10 strikeouts for Rodriguez. He was a little bit wild, but looked good. But back on topic. Yeah, so you have this guy who can do this super unique thing. It automatically raises the floor of what he can accomplish because he throws that hard. And if you can just get him to do that down the middle, this has been a philosophy of the Orioles for a couple years now, is that with their bullpen arms, they have the catchers set up very middle, and they just let the stuff play. I think we really saw this with Felix Bautista last year, because honestly, it just doesn't matter where he throws it. And this is not to claim that Vieira has the same kind of stuff as Bautista, but it's just illustrating the concept of, if we can just get him to play in the zone and not walk three guys, before he finally finds the zone for one hitter. If we can get him playing in the zone, that stuff will play up, and that does the job. And you can take a week or two and you can play with that and you can see what happens. But you don't have that opportunity if you just get rid of him right away, and you don't gain anything from getting rid of him right away, because if I'm the Orioles, I clearly am not valuing like the capabilities of Nick Vespi at this point. They do not think that he's a guy that can pitch in the major leagues. I know Twitter's going to get mad at me, but I don't have too much of an opinion. We've got a spinny guy in Danny Coulombe that I'm going to talk about later, a soft tossing spinny guy in Danny Coulombe. So clearly we can make something work. But I digress. That they don't think that anyone at AAA can really claim this spot, and so they're going to try to work this guy out and see what happens. But even if the current setup of the way that baseball works, with all this shuffling of bullpen arms and all that, even if that was not the case, right, I think we can just give the dude a little bit of grace, because he had just been traded on Sunday. I told you he was traded on Sunday. We were talking about game 1 on Monday. Broadcast said he literally flew in that morning. He got to the Orioles and got to Maryland, on Monday morning. He's with the team for like a couple hours, and then it's like, dude, you're in the game. And this is a 31-year-old guy. I didn't look up if he has a family or anything like that, but he's been around the block a little bit, and right now he doesn't know where he's living. He probably just flew out with like one carry-on bag full of clothes and a glove, and the Orioles are organizing to get the rest of his stuff. And these are just not the optimum conditions for performance. I joked with the On the Verge Discord. I was joking with them, and I said, I know that my back like feels really bad when I fly halfway across the country and have to sit in those seats for a little bit. So, I just think, in the most general sense, like, let's let him settle in, work with the catchers a little bit, work with the pitching coaches. And, we'll have another scenario where we can get him into a game. Not to say it'll be 11-0 necessarily, but if you get a 5-run lead, there's only so much damage he can do. And I know that us Orioles fans have been burned sometimes by our bullpen just blowing up out of nowhere. But, theoretically, there's a situation where you can work him in. And even if you need to keep him out, you at least get to throw a couple bullpens with him. You get to like see the stuff, right? Getting him into a game is not the only way that an MLB pitcher works on things, right? You're doing towel drills, you're focusing on your mechanics, you're reviewing video, you're throwing bullpens, you're talking. There's so much that goes into it, and he, hopefully is improving. We will find out next time he comes into a game. But at least like getting the opportunity to work with us, we acquired him so that we could try to figure him out in a way that nobody has thus far. I think that's worth a shot. Again, he throws 100 miles an hour. So we'll give him another week or two. Hopefully he gets into another game, has some success. If he doesn't, I'm fine moving on and trying to find another guy, being DFA'd on the scrap heap. We will figure it out. But I'm also not going to like focus on the literal one sore spot in an 11-3 win. So I do want to just say a little bit about Kyle Stowers real quick. Stowers really had a breakout game here. He goes 3 for 4 with 2 doubles on the day, drives in 4 and scores 1 himself. I want to give the man his flowers and just mention the contact he was making. 89.3 mile an hour line out to the pull side. 98.9 mile an hour double over Jarren Duran in left field, 104.3 mile an hour double to right center, and then a 103.8 mile an hour single up the middle, hitting the ball extremely hard. I did a whole podcast on how hard Stowers hits the ball, despite not having elite raw power. I mean, the dude finds the barrel as well as anybody did in AAA last year. That was the sample I was looking at. Definitely, he is a unique talent. The swing and miss is a very real issue, but he did not show that obviously in this game. So there is impact potential there. Hard contact all fields, coming up clutch with men on base. Yeah, Kyle Stowers, welcome back to the Pigs, dude. We're glad to have you. They gave him another start in game 2, and he went 1 for 2 before getting pulled later in the game. But yeah, great to see him up and succeeding. Obviously, he's working his tail off to be a part of this club and like just force his way into the Orioles' plans of the future. It's a cool thing to see. You root for guys like that. It seemed like he totally got leapfrogged. He put his name back on the map in spring training to an extent, and then is getting some time here. So moving on, I told you I wanted to talk about Jordan Westburg. 2 of the 3 runs the Orioles scored in game 2 were on a Jordan Westburg single in the first inning. It struck me because Brian Bayo threw 3 consecutive fastballs in the outer half. I mentioned that earlier, but just to my eye and looking at absolutely no data whatsoever, I was like, I feel like that's just not a pitch you throw to Jordan Westburg. I feel like he has just consistently hit that ball extremely hard. And so that's the benefit of having a podcast is I can just go look at stuff. I mean, you guys can all do that too, but then I can like come and share this with all you guys because I was curious just how much. And Jordan Westburg is destroying the ball over there. 4 of Westburg's 7 home runs on the year have been out over right center field fences. On April 1st, he took Nick Anderson of the Royals deep on a 93-mile-an-hour four-seam, belt high away. April 13th, he took our good friend DL Hall deep on a 93-mile-an-hour four-seam, belt high away. On May 5th, he took Nick Lodolo deep on a 95-mile-an-hour sinker, belt high away. On May 25th, he took Michael Kopech deep on a, do you know where I'm going with this? 99-mile-an-hour four-seam. Okay, this one wasn't perfectly similar. It was more middle than away and a little bit lower, but also to right center. And it serves the point that Jordan Westburg is more than happy to go ahead, extend his arms, and drive a fastball to the opposite field. This is just like a thing that he does. We've seen him do it. Even if you don't want to give him credit for the Michael Kopech home run, say that doesn't count. It wasn't an outside pitch fully. It was just a middle pitch that he could still get his arms extended and do the exact same thing. If you don't want to take that one, then sure. I mean, it is 3 fastballs, 93 to 95 miles an hour. They were all belt high, all away, and he deposited them in the right center field seats. I think I tweeted out one time, he's just like peppering that area, trying to get to Steady Eddie's 500th home run seat out there. So, beyond just the home runs, looking a bit further, StatCast has all these metrics, and they lay them out, on a 3x3 grid in the strike zone. And so looking in that zone that, mid-height and away, 68% of his balls in play that he makes contact on in that zone are hard hit over 95 miles an hour. That's 68%, 2 and 3 balls that he hits in that location are hard hit. He has a 1048 slugging percentage. He has a 619 ISO, which is slugging minus batting average. That 619 ISO in that location is 4 points higher than Shohei Ohtani's league-leading 615 slugging. And remember, ISO subtracts batting average from the slugging. So, these like incredible numbers doing incredible amounts of damage on pitches belt high away. And maybe what's even more amazing about this and about Westburg is that of the 9 zones on this 3x3 grid, that like 95 mile an hour exit velocity there is actually 6th out of 9, or out of those 9 zones. He hits the ball harder down in the middle of the plate, down and in, middle in, high and in, and high in the middle of the plate. So, basically along the whole inner half, he's actually hitting the ball harder than he is out here. But, that's hitting the ball hard isn't the only factor. He does a good job putting the ball in the air when he's, making contact on this middle out pitch. And the batted ball profile is good as a whole. I think the moral of this entire story is that Jordan Westburg is really good at baseball, in a way that I did not expect, even after watching him last year, in a way that I did not expect, hearing reports about him as a prospect. He has, I think, surpassed almost everyone's expectations. He's been incredibly good this year. And the other moral of the story is that Brian Bayo throwing 3 fastballs on the outer half to Jordan Westburg in the first inning of game 2 was a terrible strategy, and he really deserved those 2 earned runs as a result. Last thing I've got for you guys tonight, Cedric Mullins is starting to show life with the bat. I lied. I've got 2 things for you. Cedric Mullins is starting to show life with the bat. This will be pretty quick, but his results over the weekend were not that good. He only had 1 hit, but there was a lot of really, really good contact. He put 8 balls in play in this series, 99.3 miles an hour, 104.1, 98.2, 78.6, 98.2, 73.4, 99.4. So 6 of 8 balls that he hit in this series were over 98 miles an hour. And that only amounted to 1 hit. But if it were anybody but Cedric Rafaela, or, granted, maybe Cedric himself in center field, he very likely would have had a couple more hits. In game 1, Rafaela, made a leaping catch on the warning track, bumped into the wall. That definitely would have been a double for Cedric. In game 2, maybe an even more impressive running catch down to the cutout in left center field also. Takes away what probably could have been his second triple of the series. Cedric has worked through various dry spells. We've seen a lot of injuries. Impacting the ball is something that he really hasn't done a whole lot this year. But, we've seen him get his arms extended and find a barrel a couple times in this series, and that can only mean good things for the Orioles. Now the last thing of the night. I told you this was the kickoff of the campaign for Danny Coulombe 2024 All-Star. I just got to talk about this man for a minute. He's so fascinating. From a vibey sense, I love the attack mentality. Danny Coulombe is not afraid to go in on a right-handed hitter. He is not afraid to throw up in the zone. I'm going to tell you how much both of his fastballs objectively suck later in this. But it's astounding, what he can accomplish, by virtue of good locations, mixing up his pitches properly, and, stuff in the appropriate areas, I guess is the best way to say it. So a couple notes on Coulombe. This is of relievers who have thrown greater than 20 innings, which is a somewhat high mark. I would assume probably half of relievers in baseball have done this. I was trying to window it down because Danny has, thrown a good amount for us, and I think you should get credit for that. So of relievers who have thrown greater than 20 innings, Danny Coulombe is 7th in walk percentage, walking only 2.7% of batters faced. Yes, like 1 in 30 guys or 31 guys, something like that. Beyond that, he's also striking out almost 30% of hitters face. As a result, his 27% K- walk percentage is the 8th best figure of those relievers. His 11 Ks per walk is the 5th best mark, and partially helped by that walk rate, of course, but his whip of 0.68 is the number 4 mark among relievers with 20 innings. He has allowed a few home runs, so quite frankly, his ERA isn't as impressive as some of the other folks in these elite groups, but he really has limited damage pretty well outside of those couple home runs. Exit velocity and hard hit rates do not look good for him, but the pitches dance so much that he stays out of that optimal launch angle range, that 10 to 20 and some change. And that limits damage. I think this is really exemplified by the fact that his barrel percentage, which is a combo of exit velocity and launch angle being in that optimum range, barrel percentage is only 6% of batted balls, a 72nd percentile mark. His ground ball rate is at 48%. Almost 1 in every 2 balls in play is a ground ball. That's in the 73rd percentile in MLB. And I mean, again, what's so amazing about this guy, like I just told you about the results. They're all very, very good. His stuff is like not that great. By Fangraphs pitching bot, his arsenal is perfectly average. It was a 50 on the 2080 scale. By Stuff Plus, he's about 19% worse than league average. Excuse me. But that said, he uses this stuff so surgically. And I like, what I will say is I encourage everybody to go look at StatCast's like heat maps of where he throws pitches with relievers. The maps look a little bit more sporadic because there's a lower sample size. And what is hot and what is cold is, I guess, more drastic because you've only got a couple to work with. Man, my brain just shut down at the end of that sentence. But I encourage you to go check out these heat maps of these locations. You can start to see trends even in the low sample of data. Against right-handed hitters, you see cutters inside off the plate, under the hands. You see sweepers also inside off the plate, lower in the zone. You see knuckle curves like pestering below the zone. And there are kind of a few all over the place, but we'll excuse that because of what I'll tell you in a minute about that knuckle curve. And lastly, the sinkers and four seams are a collection of inside corner to the righties and kind of up in the zone and away a little bit when elevated. Against lefties, he really keeps a lot of the same recipe. Breaking balls stay away to his glove side. But with lefties, he does run the sinker inside a little bit more often, just to deter a lefty from trying to lean out over the plate quite so much. So I told you Danny Coulombe's fastballs suck, and they really, really suck. His fastball velo is 9th percentile among relievers. It's not even 91 miles an hour. The four seam and sinker both have, substantially below average vertical and horizontal movement. I laughed. Stuff Plus had his sinker stuff metric at an 11, and this is a rating that's normalized to 100. So 100 is perfectly average, and Danny Coulombe, they say his sinker is 89% worse than a league average sinker. Just a normal basic sinker, Danny Coulombe's is 89% worse. It's almost not even a pitch because it's almost 100% worse. 89% worse. These fastballs just do not do anything special. But the distinction between those pitches and how much the breaking stuff dances is so stark, and the locations are so precise that he has, and let me swallow and take a breath before I say this, Danny Coulombe has not allowed a hit on a fastball this year, either his sinker or his four seam. Once again, he has not allowed a hit on the sinker or the four seam this year in over 20 innings. The fastball is the easiest pitch to hit by every metric. The fastball is, people talk about the death of the fastball in today's game, the erasure of fastball counts. When you get behind 2-0, it's like, yeah, I'm still going to throw a sweeper. It's the most effective thing. And if I can throw it for a strike, it's going to be better than just grooving a four seam fastball on 2-0 where you're looking for that. So, fastballs are regarded as the easiest pitch to hit. His are clearly not good ones in really any way, shape, or form, but besides how he uses them. The one note I did want to make on his curveball is that this thing moves as much as like an actual human being. I'm going to go and look up the number one more time. Yeah, so his average curveball drops 63.5 inches. That is, 63.5 inches. That's 5'3.5". And there are actual full-grown humans, that are shorter than that, which is a really astounding thing. So that thing is coming in at 79.6. It's actually a relatively hard curveball for how much it moves. Relative to pitches around that speed, it is a full 10 inches of drop beyond that. It is this huge, huge, absolute hammer, like big-time vertical break, and he uses it beautifully. I told you he pesters the bottom of the zone. Every once in a while, you will see one that somehow catches the top of the zone because It's when you're like putting that much torque on your elbow and everything, it's tough to commit the release point a little bit. But he gets away with it because it moves so much. And that is what makes these fastballs at the top of the zone really play up, is the fact that you have to be ready for it to dive in on your hands with the cutter. You have to be ready for the sweeper that's going to dive down toward the bottom of the zone. And you have to be ready for the curveball that's probably going to end up nowhere near the zone. And if if the ball starts a foot and a half above the zone, there's a chance it's going to come back. He's so like devilish in how he does this. And it's so phenomenal to watch. I mean, it's so much fun. Huge Danny Coulombe fan these days. And I'm telling you, I want to see Danny Coulombe in the All-Star game this year. I know it's not flashy. I know he won't have saves, but it might be the funniest possible thing that you could do, having Danny Coulombe set up for Mason Miller. I'm just going to throw it out there. If MLB has a sense of humor, and these coaches who select the pitching staffs have a sense of humor, Danny Coulombe, once again, not even 91 miles an hour. Danny Coulombe from the left side, and then Mason Miller at 103 from the right. That is what I want to see in this All-Star game this year. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Once again, Orioles take 2 of 3 from the division rival Red Sox. That always feels good. Up next, we got 3 against the Rays. At home, Albert Suarez taking the ball against Aaron Savali, which is a little bit of a lopsided matchup. It's not really in the direction you would have thought at this time last year, because Albert Suarez was not in MLB last year, and Aaron Savali was kind of tearing up the first half of last year before he got traded. So yeah, Savali is really struggling, and Albert Suarez is not, and also he's on a major league roster. So kind of excited for that matchup. On Saturday night, we've got Kyle Bradish, our ace. Maybe he will be able to complete the no-hitter this time. He takes on the young and exciting Taj Bradley, who has thrown pretty well since he's come up. On Sunday, Cole Irvin will take on Zach Littell, who is the latest in a long string of random Rays pitchers to be very good. Going to be a good matchup. I think we'll have fun, and a couple more wins against a division rival would feel pretty darn good. So, as always, if you could be so kind, remember to follow or subscribe to the show anywhere you get your podcasts, or on YouTube, of course. Hi, YouTube. Always feel free to leave comments, reviews, thumbs up, likes, hearts, whatever you're feeling. We always appreciate the opportunity to chat with you guys, interact with each and every one of you. We're available on Twitter, X, at The Warehouse Pod, or you can email us, warehousepod@gmail.com. Once again, everyone, thanks for listening. Good series for the O's, and we hope to keep it rolling. Have a good one.